Hey, hey, hey. Time for another out of this world story from rSpace. Discovered my wife's, now ex, affair the day she was admitted into the hospital, and now, years later, she can't accept my engagement to my fiancé. If ever there was a prize for the most horrible way to learn of your significant other's affair, I would probably win it and be in its Hall of Fame. Like so many people in this sub, I suddenly found myself as a member of a club that nobody ever wants to be a part of. I will never forget the sound of my ex-sister-in-law's voice as she kept saying, I'm sorry, over and over on the phone while I drove home from a week-long business trip. I was confused and had absolutely no idea what she meant, but only after I managed to calm her down somewhat did she inform me that my wife was in the hospital and that I needed to hurry home. My mind went into overdrive as I tried to get more information as well as not crash, while I began speeding to get there faster. The only thing she told me is that it was an assault and then cut the call, and wouldn't answer when I tried to call her again. A bit of background. My ex and I met in our mid-20s. It was through a mutual friend at a barbecue. At first, she seemed almost too good to be true. Not only was she incredibly beautiful, but she was also shy and introverted. It took a while for us to officially date, but once it happened, I was over the moon. When we first tried to get intimate, she suddenly started crying. Should have taken this as a bad sign. I freaked out and thought it was something I did, but she apologized the next day and told me she was triggered. As it turns out, 2 years ago, before meeting me, she was in a long-term relationship and a guy that was abusive both emotionally, physically, as well as mentally. He would degrade her during their moments of intimacy, then apologize afterward. She had a flashback, but reassured me it had nothing to do with me, so we took things slow, as she was still in therapy. It was tough, but because I loved her, I believed once we got over this, it would make our relationship stronger, and for a while, it honestly appeared that way. Fast forward another year, and we'd gotten engaged. First-time intimacy also happened during this stage. I was fortunate enough to be able to buy a house for us, courtesy of inheritance from my late uncle. Things were going great, and I half-seriously suggested we plant a peach tree, important for later on, to signify new beginnings, and she was all for it. We were wedded not long after that, and quite frankly, it was absolutely amazing. Of course, we had our normal ups and downs like every married couple, but I considered us more lucky because she always made it a point to never go to bed upset with each other, and she would always point out gently if I did anything that upset her. Sometime later, life basically happened and I was promoted at my job. It meant more pay, but it also meant I would be traveling more for work conferences and business meetings. I noticed she had been getting down a lot more and wasn't being as intimate as before. She would keep her phone close to her and even stopped gently addressing things that upset her. I tried to talk to her about it, but she assured me that she was fine and this was a phase she was going through, and having no reason to not trust her, I let it go. She would sometimes go to her sister's place and spend the night, telling me she just needed a bit of girl time with her sister. The day I got that fateful phone call was the day she was meant to be keeping her sister company again. I remember rushing into the hospital, barely breathing and frantically asking about my wife, when world's most understanding and patient police officer sat me down to explain what happened. He told me he was a friend of my sister-in-law, and he happened to respond to a domestic disturbance call. He arrived on the scene to find a couple fighting. The supposed boyfriend was on top of the female, punching her, and she was screaming, trying to scratch him. This didn't make any sense to me because, 1, this had nothing to do with my wife because we're married, and 2, literally everyone who knew my wife knew she wouldn't do that. He gave me a knowing look and placed his hand on my shoulder, then told me to be very calm because said girlfriend was actually my wife. If it weren't for the severity of the situation, I would have laughed in his face, but something in the way he said everything made me believe him. I then was ushered in by a nurse to see my wife, and what greeted me to this day, I still can hardly find the words to describe it. I just stood there for what seemed like an eternity. Then a doctor came in and explained her injuries to me. The jaw was slightly fractured. Her left eye was completely swollen shut and had massive bruising covering half of her face, as well as 3 broken ribs. Then the doctor dropped another bomb and told me she was pregnant. I still couldn't understand how this happened. Then I caught sight of her sister. She at first tried to avoid me, but at the persuasion of her police officer friend, she told me what she knew. It turns out my wife's ex had gotten in contact with her 5 months ago. He was doing this redemption pyramid step thing where he would apologize to people he has wronged in order to clear his karma. Anyone else's betrayed spouse meter going crazy right now? They began talking more, Then he convinced her to meet up for coffee and show her he was a changed man. Obviously, old feelings resurfaced, coupled with the fact that he appeared changed now. It soon developed into an emotional affair. My wife approached her sister for advice, who told her to take things slow and just get it out of her system if she needed to, which then led to a physical affair 3 months later. She actually told my wife that she should at least make peace with her ex in whatever form it may be, and even offered to cover for my wife once in a while. My sister-in-law was in tears at this point and kept apologizing to me, saying that she didn't know about the abuse as my wife never told anyone other than me and her therapist at the time about it. I was numb. I just couldn't feel anything and was absolutely dumbfounded by my wife's actions. When my wife finally woke up, I was there, and she burst into tears upon seeing me. I spent the following months in zombie flight mode. There was individual counseling for her as well as marriage counseling for us at the strong urging of her family. In counseling, she was surprisingly forthcoming about how it happened and how she absolutely hated herself for causing me pain. She mentioned how at one point on her way home from his place, she actually fantasized about driving into the river because she smelled like him and didn't want his scent to corrupt me. However that made sense. She said she then tried to end it, but it was too weak, and only after learning that she was pregnant that it actually woke her up and made her realize that any further contact with this man was toxic to not only her, but the unborn child as well. Hence, went to end things in person for good when he snapped on her. She became a shell of herself and developed a phobia for any other males but me. At one point, she couldn't even use the bathroom at night unless I was holding her hand. Sad, right? After the baby was born, son by the way, we got our paternity test and he was mine. But the more time I spent with her, the more I realized I didn't hate my wife. I actually loathed her. I couldn't see the woman I married, but instead saw his leftovers each time I looked at her. I decided to leave because I was afraid I'd do something I'd regret and be exactly like her abusive ex. She begged me not to leave and even made the ridiculous offer of giving me a hall pass, as well as slapping her if I wanted to. I knew at this point I had to get out. She was actually very generous during the divorce. She moved back into her parents and signed a very well thought out co-parenting plan issued by the courts. Moving forward 3 years later, and I meet my now fiance by chance. I was in a bookstore with a buddy of mine, and we were discussing Egyptian mythology when this beautiful woman approached me to correct me on my pronunciation of the Egyptian gods and cities. Needless to say, immensely impressed by not only her understanding, but also by the fact that she is Egyptian herself. We exchanged numbers, which eventually led us to dating. When I finally proposed to her, it was actually in front of the peach tree I had planted years ago. I got down on one knee, but before I got my answer, she ran into the house, then came out with a ring as well. Turns out, she was actually planning on proposing herself because she was madly in love with me, and she didn't just want any other woman to have me. My son, in all his sweet childlike innocence, told his mother what happened because he was present when it happened. My ex literally showed up that night in the rain yelling about how could I propose to her, my fiance, in front of our tree, and that this is the end of us. I am completely exhausted at this point. I cannot go no contact because she is the mother of my child, but she is basically harassing me and my fiance. How do I convince her to move on, to get over her fear of men and not force me to get a restraining order? Sorry it was long, but I am really desperate. Edit. Wanted to ask a question to the insightful women of Reddit. Something that still bugs me to this day is the fact that she even made time for her ex, who took pleasure in destroying her only for her to suffer a much worse fate. Is it normal for the abused to want the attention of the abuser even if she might hate him? Something my ex said once. Edit 2. Forgot to add this in the original post. When my fiance presented me with the ring which she was going to use to propose to me, she had an engraving on the inner band which states, "To my pharaoh." Damn, I love this woman. Let's check into the community for an insightful comment before we move on to the update. Coffee and Tarot says, "Why on earth would you agree to this? The only appropriate response to your son and his mother over this ridiculous request would have been a firm no, and tell him to pick something else for the party. Kids get told no all the time, and they get over it. There were at least 1,000 ideas for a kid's birthday celebration that would have been better than this, without subjecting your fiance to a front row seat watching the three of you being a family. Number one would have been, and should be from now on, 2 separate parties, one with the ex and her family, one with you and your family. I sincerely believe that the fiance was not okay with any part of this, no matter what she agreed to or said otherwise. and it was probably among the most cringeworthy things she has ever endured. You have to draw the line with the ex now, or don't be surprised if it comes up in an argument down the line. This was the absolute weakest show of support for your fiance's feelings, and she will begin a tally if you don't change your behavior completely. How will you support her feelings in the future? You are not being firm enough with the ex. Your ego must enjoy her continued desire for you on some level, or you would have shut her down hard a long time ago. You are literally begging for problems if you continue on the way you have been. You will know you are being firm enough when you no longer need to write posts like this one. The child has to learn to accept that this is the way things are, and you and his mother are not a couple. It sounds like the ex can still successfully manipulate you through whatever means possible, as well as your child, and you keep falling for it, allowing her to breach your boundaries on a continuous basis. Your ex obviously planted a seed in your child's head where the three of you could be together. This birthday wish has the ex written all over it. If you allow this kind of thing to continue, you will eventually find yourself with two exes. You have much to learn about women. Update. First off, a big thank you to the user Mama202045 for your simple yet amazing advice. Saved us a lot of trouble. Now on to what has happened so far. Since my last post, my son's birthday was coming up and he told us he wanted to have a camp night for it. Now, I must explain the boy absolutely loves the outdoors. Everything from camping to hiking to even playing in rivers are his favorite, and obviously due to an ongoing situation, we cannot go to our usual spots. So I offered my backyard for it. Another request he had was for my ex to sleep over as well. He wanted to imitate a scene from one of his kid adventure shows where both parents are sitting on either side of the child and all three are roasting marshmallows on the campfire. Now, I had absolutely no intention of denying my son's birthday wishes, but at the same time, I couldn't have my ex sleep in the same tent as me and my son. That would be far too disrespectful to my fiance, even though she said she understood. It was clear she wasn't okay with it. My ex seemed to take advantage of this and kept saying how much she was looking forward to spending the night with her two men, and even went as far as to buy a whole lot of camping equipment that would put Bear Grylls to shame. She was certainly trying to rub it in my fiance's face and wasn't graceful about it either. I had to tell her to stop a couple of times, but she only relented when I threatened to invite her sister. Ever since our divorce, my ex has had a burning hatred for her sister. She, my ex, acknowledges her role in the destruction of our marriage, but blames her sister for encouraging the affair and not safeguarding from her making choices that would ruin hers, but more importantly, according to her, our life together. It's gotten so bad that she refuses to let her sister spend any significant amount of time with our son, which at one point caused my ex-sister-in-law to have severe depression. My ex-sister-in-law has been trying for years to reconcile with her sister, but it just seems to get worse as time goes on. A Redditor, Mama202045, offered me a simple and effective solution. She suggested I go out and purchase a multi-roomed tent, that way my fiancé could be included. I wasted no time and immediately went out to get one. Of course, my ex wasn't too happy about that, but was glad to be under the same roof as me. During the birthday celebration, my son was on cloud 9. He ran around the yard and pretended he was a great explorer discovering a new land. When evening came, I made the fire and my ex provided the marshmallows. He excitedly sat between us and started roasting his marshmallow alongside us. What I didn't expect was after we were done taking pictures and making s'mores, he handed my fiancée a stick and a marshmallow as well and sat next to her to make his second s'more. It's honestly a mystery how something this pure and perfect could come out of the absolute mess that was the relationship between me and my ex. My ex asked for a bit of my time, to which I obliged. We stepped into the kitchen, and she apologized for her behavior on the day that I proposed, but not for her actions following that. She told me she still sees me as her husband in her mind, so the thought of me giving my heart to another terrified her. She said she never wanted to cause me pain and would give anything to go back in time and undo her mistakes. She mentioned how happy she was when the paternity test showed that I was the father because she thought it was a new beginning for us and that he was proof of our love. I thanked her for the courage to share all of this, but told her I was happy with where I was in life and with whom I was with, but hoped she would find someone to make her happy as well. She said she meant what she told me on that day we divorced and will wait for me. I left the kitchen feeling exhausted because none of what I was trying to say got through to her. We decided to call it a night where me and my fiancé slept in one room of the tent and my ex with my son in another. All in all, a good birthday for my son, but not so good night for me. Alright, Time for some more community comments. Throw RA 0987128890 starts us off. One suggestion here. Never ever be alone with your ex. Make sure any interaction with her include one of your adult friends, family members, or fiance. Her mindset is you belong to her and she will go to any lengths to torpedo your relationship and get you back. After what she told you in the kitchen, I would record every conversation with her just to cover my own butt. Having a child with her means years of dealing with her, so cover your own butt and have an awesome life. Ginger610 says, I also am dealing with my boyfriend's ex trying to torpedo our relationship because she realizes how bad she effed up 7 years ago. Trying to hit him up with the whole, we should be together because of our daughter. I've already warned him he is not to spend any time around her, or I will take that as he doesn't value our relationship or me. Exes that cheat and then pull the victim card are absolutely disgusting humans. And the last comment from Bam Bam Kablam. Same. My fiance and his ex have been divorced since 2015. She still reaches out every few months to tell him how she misses him and to check on our relationship. He hadn't blocked her because he had helped her raise her 2 boys from a previous relationship and was interested in their welfare. But he finally had to after she kept making up more and more outrageous lies to try and get him back. I just want to shake her. You don't want to lose the love of your life? Don't cheat on him constantly while he's at work and then leave him for the affair partner.